Hey everybody, welcome back to A Matter of Life and Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. I am Joe Labriola, and this is episode 25 of the podcast. It's crazy to think that, but it's episode 25, and this is going to be episode 25 part 1. There's also going to be an episode 25 part 2, and episode 25 as a whole, both parts 1 and part 2, are going to be ranking Steve's epics. These are songs from the albums that Steve has solo writing credits on. The musicianship, the lyrics, all that stuff. Now, some of these songs could be up for debate, but this is my list. This is what I chose to pick for these credits for Steve on the records that he's written. So let's just dive right into this. The first one, there's 23 songs. There's 23 songs in total that I picked. We're going to do the first half of those today, and I think we're going to end on number 13. So we're going to do like the first 11, I believe, today in part 1, and then in part 2, I will do the top 12 songs. So firstly, at number 23 in last place, Mother Russia from the No Prayer for the Dying album that came out in 1990. Mother Russia is right around 5.5 minutes long, and it's just not that great of a song. It's lackluster, but I don't want to diminish it totally. There are some things about it that are cool. It has an interesting intro riff that's kind of haunting. It's very like Eastern European sounding, which they do this purposely, right? Steve does this purposely. He wants to make it sound like some kind of like cultural music, some kind of Russian music. So it's very eerie sounding and it's acoustic-y. Nico's coming in, tapping the hi-hat at the beginning. And then it kind of goes into like a heavier version of this intro riff, like the ding 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 ding, and then it goes in the like a heavier version of it. Bruce comes in with the first verse, and there's like this haunting orchestral part over the main riff that's heavy. Then there's an ambient breakdown, instrumental drum track, and then a heavy guitar breakdown with a few, I call them tangled and uninspiring solos from Yan and Davey. They're just not like full-fledged, in-your-face, hard, kick-ass solos. They're there, but they're just like they're borderline not even solos if you listen to them. I mean, technically they are, but they just don't grab you. There's nothing to them. There's no meat on the bones. It's very thin, very uninspired guitar work in the song. And the faults with it, I mean, me listening to it, it just feels like it's just a cluster of too many incongruent musical ideas. Like, the things just don't line up the way that they should. The lyrics aren't very inspiring. Bruce seems kind of like he's rushing through his lines. He's not very enthusiastic or energetic when he's singing. I mean, individually, like, there's cool riffs and some instrumental parts, but, like, as a whole, like I said, it just doesn't work. It's not, for something of that caliber and that degree, when you're talking about a historical thing, as Maiden does this, like, expertly in some of these later tracks we're going to talk about. This one just falls flat, and that's why it's in the number 23 position in last place. It's just uninspired and incongruent. Those are my final thoughts on it. The two words that I can sum it up with are, it's uninspired and incongruent. It's just not one of Steve's best. It's pretty weak. It's really weak. It's bad. And that's why No Prayer is the weakest. I mean, this is an example of an epic on this record, and it just doesn't do anything for you. And much of the rest of the record is the same way, which is why it's the worst thing I've ever done, in my opinion. So that's Mother Russia. Coming in at number 22 from the Killers record is Prodigal Son. Now, the thing about Killers is it lacks an epic. All the songs are kind of like quick. They're not really epic, so to speak. Like, Killers is a longer song. There's some other longer songs on the record, but they're more like fast-paced, in-your-face. They're not like ambient or have those musical ideas or transitions or prog elements to them. Prodigal Son's probably the closest thing to that. In a way, you could argue that it's not really epic, but it's a Steve solo pen song, and it's the one on the album that is the most like an epic if you were to pick one. So, it has a really cool acoustic intro. Clive's drumming accentuates that intro a little bit. Then it goes into like full acoustic chords, and there's some drums and some really cool complementary bass lines. And then Paul's voice comes in, and it's really nicely accented by this really neat guitar ditty after he sings his lines. Like, well, go away, and then like that little ditty, you know. And they talk about Lamia in the song, which is a mythological beast, or a witch in the medieval tradition. Lamias are referred to as witches. The lyrics aren't very inspiring. Adrian and Davy's guitar solos about halfway through the song are the best part of the song, in my opinion. They both really do a really good job and have really awesome, raw, kick-ass solos in the song. Then it goes back into the kind of like Sam Acoustic-y bit that opened it up. And after that, some more repetition, just like the beginning of the song. And then it kind of fizzles out and never really reaches another gear. It's only 6 minutes and 5 seconds long. So, and like I said, it's from Killers, which came out in 1981. So this is the sophomore record. I think it's a decent song. It's not amazing, but it's not as good as the rest of these. I mean, some of these next ones are just unbelievable. But that's pretty much it for Prodigal Son. It's a different take. It's the most ambient song on the record, and it's probably the closest thing to an epic. I don't think it's a bad song. I don't think it's horrible. It's just not Maiden. It's you can tell that they're experimenting with stuff, and they really haven't found their full identity yet. And I think Killers as an album showcases that. It's a very experimental album, and Prodigal Son is no exception to that. So that's where it is with that. Just never reaches that next gear. If I had to sum it up, my final thoughts on it would be it's a stagnant precursor. So it's a stagnant precursor of what's to become. It never really cranks up and hits that peak. It's just very steady all the way through. It's kind of like a safe play. But it's decent. You know, you can tell they're experimenting. So after that, there's kind of a little step up in quality, not like a gargantuan or gigantic step up in quality of these songs, but there is a little step up. And that brings us to number 21, which is Fear of the Dark, the title track from 1992's Fear of the Dark album. It's 7 minutes and 16 seconds long. The thing about Fear of the Dark is, like I said, there's a subtle step up here now in terms of like these songs coming up, and we're going to see another one too, like a big step up a little bit later. But Fear of the Dark has an amazing intro riff, the haunting ambient sound of it, with Bruce narrating the lines like do 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 do, that part, and then like Bruce, you know, almost whispering, like creepily whispering, I am the man who walks alone when I'm walking a dark road at night, strolling through the park. I mean, that's just super cool, that whole bit. And then the transition into the heavier riff, like the and like the breakdown and all that stuff, or like, have you run your fingers down the wall and have you felt your neck skin crawl when you're searching for the light? That part's amazing. And just Steve's bass is really accenting Bruce's vocals in the verse sections. You can really hear Steve's bass just like accenting that, like in the verse sections. It's incredible. The bridge part, like I said, the band. I mean, a really cool part. Yan's solo is pretty decent. It's not as great as Davy's. Davy's solo in Fear of the Dark is absolutely killer, by the way. I mean, it's just one of his coolest solos. It's incredible to listen to. Listen to Davy's solo in Fear of the Dark. Davy's solos are amazing in general, but listen to his Fear of the Dark solo. It's amazing. After Davy's solos, it goes back into Bruce singing Fear of the Dark, Fear of the Dark, and then the very last, I think he says one more time, and then the last one's Fear of the Dark, into the heavier riff again, and then back into another verse line of watching horror films the night before, depicting witches and folklore. Just amazing. And then back into the very last line of the song, which ends it with Bruce saying, when I'm walking a dark road, I am the man who walks alone. It's just a really cool ending that goes back into the beginning of the song and ties the whole song together. I think it's really cool. Like I said, this is a step up from the previous two songs, a step up from Prodigal Son and Mother Russia. But again, and I've mentioned this on some previous podcasts, and Matt and I have talked about this when we talked about the record, when we talked about the songs, the live version of Fear of the Dark is just so much better than the album version. There's just more energy, there's more rawness, more crowd participation with it. I guess you could say that really about any Maiden song, though, to a certain extent. But then again, there is a fine line where some of these album songs are just as good live. And I think this song is one of those ones where they kind of learned from this, and then they started to make their songs sound more live on the record. And I think it was a great idea, because you'll really see that with actually some of the stuff in the 90s, and then even on Brave New World, a lot of crowd participation from Brave New World in the reunion era lineup, all the way to the present. Songs are designed to be played live, and it's almost sometimes impossible on the later stuff to separate the album version from the live version because they sound so fucking similar. That's what's so great about it. Fear of the Dark was a learning experience. Great song, though, and that's why it's number 21. Moving on from Fear of the Dark, another song, just solo pen written by Steve from the same album, Fear of the Dark, in 1992. This song's about 6 minutes and 52 seconds long, so it's a little bit shorter than Fear of the Dark. It's Afraid to Shoot Strangers. Where Fear of the Dark was kind of safe and satisfactory would be how I would sum that up. They recycled some elements from Number of the Beast and kind of improved upon them and went a little bit off and did some different stuff. They kind of played it safe, yet it was satisfactory. Afraid to Shoot Strangers is kind of more experimental. It's I would say it's an adequate experiment. It's has a really cool, interesting, soft, ambient opening with Bruce's vocal lines kind of narrating again in this whispery tone. And that whole line Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, right? The backing vocals, really neat. And then the soft bit kind of goes into more this upbeat melody, which you can kind of hear Yannick's guitar playing influence on the song a lot. Especially looking back on it in hindsight, when you see some of the later stuff that he's done and kind of going back and listening to Afraid to Shoot Strangers, you can really see Yannick's influence there. And then you have Bruce singing Afraid to Shoot Strangers, afraid. That part. There's a really cool, faster bridge part after that where Yannick has a solo. And it's kind of an interesting solo because he palm mutes it. It's more like a palm muted sounding solo. Which is really interesting. And it goes into this really neat melody then with Bruce repeating Afraid to Shoot Strangers again, Afraid to Shoot Strangers, several times. Then Davey, again, with an epic solo where he's just abusing his whammy bar. Unbelievable. Then into another melodic section. And the thing about these different sections in Afraid to Shoot Strangers is Afraid to Shoot Strangers as a song has some really solid lyrics and solid song construction, but kind of going back to what I talked about with Mother Russia, the instrumentation is kind of a bit all over the place. It in a way, there's some really cool ideas in it. They're way better than Mother Russia's ideas, but they just never really hit that gear. There are some choices where they should have stayed with kind of like a heavier driving or the ambient side. It's almost like there's this duality where I think they're mixing too much, and it doesn't really shape up well. They would perfect that later with songs. But again, this is more of an experimental song. More proggy than Fear of the Dark, I would say. It's less safe. They take more risks on it. But again, it's an adequate experiment, and I think it's a good song. It's probably the best song on the record, in my opinion. But still not quite as good as what would come after that. So with that being said, moving on to number 19. Number 19 for me is Lost in a Lost World from the latest record, Senjutsu, which came out in 2021. It's 9 minutes and 31 seconds. Now, where Afraid to Shoot Strangers is adequate experimentation, Lost in a Lost World is more elegant experimentation. It has this really cool ambient opening with like a little bit of echo or delay on Bruce's vocals. The appears to be is a show. And like the other section, we all have some better places to go. It's just so cool. And there's like this like spiritual background chanting. Then it goes into like this heavier driving riff, like and Bruce comes in with "To people worshiping the sun." It's really cool. It's a historical piece. It's about Native Americans. It's really interesting. Like, it's so cool. There's some really cool guitar interludes in this one under the vocals. The whole song is just a ride. It really is. It's a really strong song. The problem is there are just songs that are so much better. And like I said, when we get to this song, this is where there's another step up. So we had Mother Russia, Prodigal Son. Then there was a slight step up with Fear of the Dark and Afraid to Shoot Strangers. Now there's like a bigger step up to like Lost in a Lost World. And just the guitar interludes and some of the lines in this, like lyrically, are incredible. Like, feel the spirit of the old ones standing proud upon their race. Ancestors who will never be retraced. Only made of innocence. Just like Bruce just singing all this stuff, and then the Lost in a Lost World just being screamed like, lost in a lost world, buried on sacred ground. Lost in a lost world, standing on sacred ground. There's a couple different variations of the chorus lines, which is cool, so it gives it some versatility. It's not the same thing being said over and over again. Then it goes into another different melodic interlude, and then another one before there's like this guitar solo, which sounds kind of like Yannick. I've never seen this live, but it sounds like Yann, and I think there's a little bit of delay on there. And then it goes into another solo after that one, which sounds like Adrian. Back into the chorus, lost in a lost world, buried on sacred ground. Like I said, there's versatility in there, because then it's standing on sacred ground, lying on sacred ground, and then Bruce kind of like holds the last one. He's like, sacred ground. And then the song just goes into this amazing outro section with Bruce just narrating, like, and kind of like whispering, almost like he's sad. Like it's a sorrowful closer. It's like, will we ever hear our old ones? That whole part is absolutely beautiful. And with that section, a highlight, it's Steve's bass. Steve's bass is just like accenting the vocals and every other instrument in this really unique way. And the last line of the song is just like so beautiful. It's like literally a transcendent song. Bruce says, as the clouds all drift away now until we meet again. And then like the music just stops and fades out. It's just an amazing song. Lost in a Lost World is fantastic. Just a super original, refreshing song. Again, The problem with this is, like I said, all these songs now are super hard to rank from Lost in a Lost World onward because they're all very similar in a lot of ways, and then the subtle differences between them are kind of why I put them in higher or lower positions. And really, it's based on what I like about the band and what I like musically and what I like lyrically from that point onward. But these are all pretty much, I mean, these last couple songs up until the end of this episode are all pretty much, I mean, they're fractions apart. Like, these songs are fractions apart in terms of, like, points, if you were to rank them. Like, fractions. So with that being said, moving on to number 18, When the Wild Wind Blows from the Final Frontier record that came out in 2010. This one's like just shy of 11 minutes. It's 10 minutes and 59 seconds long. In terms of a reunion song and why it's so low kind of on the list is, if you listen to some previous episodes of the podcast, I think The Final Frontier is a great record, don't get me wrong, but I think it's probably the weakest record that the band's done since the reunion. And When the Wild Wind Blows is kind of gives you an example of why I'm saying that, and I'm going to go through it here. Like, it has a very interesting opening melody, which kind of rolls into, like, when Bruce starts singing the lyrics, like, it's like someone recounting a tale or reading a story to someone, and then Bruce kind of just goes into getting ready when the wild wind blows, and then there's this heavier part. Lyrically, this song is pretty good, but it just doesn't have that same emotional gravity or historical pull or literary, like, tightness or closeness that some of their earlier stuff has, and then some of their later stuff after it has. It's just not as epic, if that makes any sense. I know this is the epic on the album, like it's a closer, right? But it's just not as epic. It's a different and it's a cool rendition of Raymond Briggs' story, When the Wind Blows, the British author. And the ending's different, it's not the same. But it lacks in some ways for me. Like, and I don't want to, like, go off on a tangent here, but if you go back to, like, the previous record, there's, like, multiple epics on it. There is on this, too, but for the closer of the record, I don't know. I think Steve has just written better stuff. Steve, like, again, this is a Steve penned epic. He's written better stuff. Not that this song's bad. I do like it. I do enjoy it a lot. It's I listen to it occasionally for something different, but it's just not quite as good as the stuff that came before and the stuff that came after in terms of Steve's epics. Like, if you put this in the scope of Iron Maiden, like we said before with the podcast, if you put this song in the scope of Steve epics, I just don't think it's one of Steve's best. That's why it's towards the bottom of the list. But the song in general was great. I mean, the bridge section's my favorite part of the song. Into the part, like, where Bruce is saying, he sees the picture on the wall is falling down, upside down. Really cool. And then it goes off on more lyrical stuff in Adrian's solo, which is great. Then there's a little interlude. Then there's this then when they come out of that interlude, Davey has an amazing solo again, which he does tons of whammy bar on. That's like his thing. Back into the interlude part, the into Davey coming up with this really unique melody line, into another driving riff where Bruce, the driving riff is really cool, where Bruce sings, "They've been preparing for some weeks now, or when the crucial moment comes." That whole part. And then the end of that is like, "Now the days ever ending have begun." And then as soon as Bruce says that, Ian has a solo, which is insane. Then there's a harmony riff, back into the opening melody, and then Bruce ends with, "When they found them, they had their arms wrapped around each other." That whole bit. "Bottle of poison found by their clothes. Mistook the earthquake for the fallout. Just another when the wild wind blows." Like, really cool. I do like the closing part of it. I think it's really interesting. Another thing I love about the song is, like, the guitar solos. Like, all three guys are ripping in this. And they do it in Lost in a Lost World, too. But in this one, like, they do have, musically, I think it's a little bit more synergistic, guitar-wise, than Lost in a Lost World. Just unbelievable. So I love it. I love the song. I think it's cool. It's tasty. It's catchy, but not quite as good as some of the stuff before or after. So to sum up, When the Wild Wind Blows, it's kind of whimsical, but it's also dreary and dynamic. It's a really sad story. I mean, it's kind of depressing, really, but it has like a storybook feel to it. Like it really does kind of pull from the literature, but not in a way where I just don't think it's as strong as some of the other literary inspirations that Steve has written about. I'm not saying he didn't put any effort into it, because obviously there's some effort. I mean, it's an amazing song. It takes all that skill and ability for composition and arrangement, but it's just not, like I said, I just don't think it's one of his better epics. It's a great song, but on the list of his epics, it's, in my opinion, it's not one of my favorites, and I don't think it's one of his best. Number 17 is No More Lies from 2003's Dance of Death record. This one's 7 minutes and 21 seconds. This song is really unique in a way, and I'm sitting here listening to these songs and trying to figure out where to place them. And the reason I put this one above When the Wild Wind Blows and Lost in a Lost World and those other ones, there's something about it. Like it's straightforward. It's very straightforward, but it's like it's straightforward and sophisticated. If I had to sum it up, has a really cool opening melody that sets the tone for that minstrelly Renaissance vibe. It's very ambient sounding. Bruce comes in with and the lyrics in this are really good. Like, there's a darkened sky before me. There's no time to prepare. Salvage a lost horizon, but no regrets from me. Maybe I'll be back some other day. Like an echo in the background. It's so good. To live again, just who can say? What shape or form I might be, just no chance for me. And then hurry time, no disgrace. And so that whole part, then Nick goes drums kick in like get no more lies with the drums. No more lies. There's some sophistication in that simplicity, like the no more lies with Nico's drums, and like just having that accentuation at the forefront. It's very simple, but it's very sophisticated, and I think that's what makes it a little bit better than the songs that came before. And with No More Lies on the drums and the da 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 da, it gets faster. After that, it gets heavier, and then Bruce comes in with probably my favorite line in the entire song. Like, they're all sitting at my table, talking tall and drinking wine, but their time is up just like me, but they just don't know it yet. And then that whole part, like, so just a word of warning, when you're in your steepest dreams, there's nothing you can hide from, I got my eye on you. That whole part is amazing. Back into like the pre-chorus, and then the chorus with No More Lies again, with the opening melody just played heavier and more harmonious with the guitars, and then more harmonized guitar parts into Davey's unbelievable solo in the song. Immediately after him, Adrian solos, and then immediately after Adrian, Yen solos, like all in a row. All are amazing. It's just super complete. It's just a fantastic song. It's a very well-rounded. Like I said, it's very straightforward, but very, very sophisticated. And then back again into the pre-chorus, back into the No More Lies with the drums, into the intro melody riff, which is super heavy, and then they go back into the closing with the ambient melody from the beginning. And then Bruce ends it with, like, no more lies. If you watch, like, the Death on the Road version, it's really cool. I mean, some of the stuff that's played live is awesome. This is one of those songs I was talking about. You can tell it's kind of, like, written to be played live. It has a live feel. It's one of those songs, like, when you listen to the record version and you listen to the live version, it's very hard to separate them because they're both just so good. And obviously you can tell which one's live and which one's not because you hear a crowd and stuff screaming, right? But like musically and the way Bruce sings it, it's very, very live sounding even on the record. And this is an example of that. When the Wild Wind Blows has that to a certain extent too, but not like this. This This is a really good example of that thing I talked about before, where they learned from Fear of the Dark and they made songs in the studio sound live, and this one has that in spades. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing. After No More Lies, coming in at number 16, The Klansman, from Virtual Eleven, the 1998 album. 1998, that record came out. And this song is 9 minutes and 6 seconds long. Thoughts about this song, final thoughts before I dive in, and like just to sum it up before I go through it. It's a song that's inspiring and invigorating. And I say that in a way like I said it about the live stuff. Because when you hear this song, even on the album and live, obviously live gets you more invigorated and energized, right? But it is a very inspiring and great song. The amazing acoustic bass and guitar intro for it is phenomenal. It's based on the historical figure William Wallace in the battle for Scottish independence from the British. Battle of Stirling Bridge, that kind of stuff. It's a song about freedom, Bruce says in Rock in Rio, which should be something familiar to you all, which is sometimes is not. That whole thing, that whole speech. But the almost whispered sections on the studio version, and then Bruce does it really well in the live version too. Wake alone in the hills with the wind in your face. Feels good to be proud and be free in a race that is part of a clan. To live on high lands, the air that you breathe, so pure and so clean. That whole section, and then at the end, it's kind of a little bit harsher. It's like, just to be free. It's a little bit harsher sounding. And then more heavy stuff comes in. The lyrics are really amazing. Right to believe and a need to be free. In a time when you die, and without asking why, can't you see what they do? They're grinding us down. Like, that whole part, just amazing. Lyrics are phenomenal. And then the end of that part is, I am a Klansman, into the heavy freedom, very much like No More Lies with the drums, and the guitars, freedom, dun, 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 dun. That whole part plays out into this amazing instrumental bridge and interlude section, into some more harmonized guitar parts, into Jan's solo, immediately followed by Dave's solo, back into that intro acoustic riff, into this really cool, no, we can't let them take anymore. No, we can't let them take anymore. We're the land of the free. This bridge, and then it's into another bridge with a similar, but it's oh, same feel, like the same feel, the same like measure and stuff like that, but instead of the lyrics, it's just, chant, and it works amazing with the crowd. Like I said, it's a really amazing crowd song. Then it goes into another dynamic shift. And on the Rock in Rio version, when the next dynamic shift, Bruce is like doing the Irish jig on stage. It's hilarious. And then Dave has this really cool, like, alternate picking riff, like whip, blip, 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 during the freedom. Dave like plays underneath, it's like blip, blip. Really neat alternate picking riff. And the Rock in Rio version too, Dave uses a drumstick on his guitar at that part. It's just really neat. Like, it's a really amazing song. And the first time I heard it actually was from Rock in Rio, and then went back and listened to the album version. But they're both, like I said, it's really cool. Like, I gotta give Blaze credit on the record. I mean, it's a really good song. It's the best song on Virtual 11, and it's just an amazing song. Like I said, it's very inspiring and very invigorating, very energizing song. And then to close it out, they go back into the acoustic intro, and Bruce kind of just like lets it go at the end. It's very soft, but it's very like straightforward, and like I said, very inspiring, like lyrically. Bruce going, I know what I want when the timing is right, and I'll take what is mine. I am the Klansman. And it just fades out. It's an amazing song. Amazing. One of Steve's best. Like, it's really cool. Like, That's why it's where it's at for me, at that slot, number 16. Moving on from Klansman. Number 15, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, from the album of the same name in 1988. This song is 9 minutes and 52 seconds long. The beginning is amazing. The dun 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 dun. The Nicholas drums come in, ding ding ding, like the accent it. The keyboards and the synths, and then harmonious guitar parts come in to fill it. And then Bruce comes in after that part with "Here they stand, brothers them all the sons divided they fall. Here await." Like that whole section, it's amazing. It's like Bruce is narrating the story, this conceptual story they created for this record. He's narrating the prophecy of the seventh son. It's super enchanting and captivating and mesmerizing to hear over that riff at the beginning and the melody and the harmony lines of the song. And then it goes into the chorus, which for me, like I said before on some podcasts, is the weakest part of the song. Seventh son of a seventh son, 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 seventh son, and it just repeats. It's kind of repetitive. That's the part of the song that is a bit of a letdown for me. And then it goes into like this kind of other musical interlude where Bruce is going, oh, oh, oh. Then back into like a driving riff, which is amazing, a dynamic shift. Then they watch the progress he makes, the good and the evil, which path will he take? Both of them trying to manipulate the use of his powers before it's too late. Oh, and then back into that whole part, it's amazing. Back into the chorus. Then there's a bridge part with guitar parts, melodies, and harmonies. Then like a real quiet section with Nico like on the hi-hat. There's some eerie ambience in the background. And then Bruce kind of tells you the story. There's some synthesizer and keyboard accents to kind of like flesh out the story here, like it's being told, like it's a tale. Today is born the seventh one, born of woman, the seventh son. That whole section. He is the chosen one. He has the gift of second sight. That whole thing. So it shall be written. So it shall be done. That whole part. Then there's this crazy like guitar chords that are being played in the background by Dave and Adrian that echo out. Then there's this dun 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 dun. It's just this building into this huge instrumental payoff that's insane. It's like and then the Davey's amazing solo, then another instrumental break. Then there's another solo after Davey does his first solo. Then there's a guitar harmony between Adrian and Dave. Then Adrian takes a solo. Then there's another instrumental break. Then it goes into Adrian's second solo. And then there's this like chanting in the background while, if you watch like the Maiden England DVD when they played in Birmingham, the fireworks go off. And there's another instrumental bridge with Adrian and Davey and Steve into this another amazing melodic riff. And then this entire melodic riff where they're playing together goes into like back into Nico again with this heavy drum fill. It's like and then like fireworks on the Maiden England thing that just explode and go off. One thing about this song is it is the only song I can really say in the Maiden catalog that really showcases the instrumental prowess of the guys in the band. Like, not that the other songs don't, but this is almost like a borderline instrumental. It's a progressive, polished Sojourn. That's how I describe it. My final thoughts on it. It really showcases Davey and Adrian's guitar chops, the ability to arrange a musical composition from Steve, like that whole thing. I don't know if he was going for that. Obviously, he can do it in spades, but this song is one of the only songs in the Maiden catalog that does that. it's very proggy that way in terms of like instrumentation and musicianship. Now, with that being said, the downside to it is the chorus, like I mentioned, which is super repetitive, and the fact that Bruce doesn't really sing on it all that much. There's a lot of parts where he has a break. Like, he has a decent break. The song is almost 10 minutes long, 9 minutes and 52 seconds, and I want to say for maybe, I don't know, half of that, 5 minutes, 4.5, 5 minutes, Bruce isn't singing. It's more like guitar, bass, drums. Like, that's the forefront, and the keyboards in the background. Like, so that for me is why it's where it's at. But it's one of the most instrumentally amazing songs that Iron Maiden's ever done. It's, like I said, a progressive, polished sojourn. It really takes you on a trip. You're listening to this whole thing about the seventh son and his story and where he comes from. And maybe that's why Bruce isn't needed as much. But it's almost like he's becoming, like, the music and the instrumentation is him evolving into this ultimate being, or the chosen one. And I think that's a really cool thing. It really does set the tone. An amazing song. And now after Seventh Son, which was number 15, we're coming to number 14, which for me is Sign of the Cross from the X Factor, the 1995 album. This song is 11 minutes and 16 seconds. And up to like the reunion, this was like their longest song after Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner for the longest time. Up until they got to like where we're at now in 2023 with, you know, the latest albums, Senjutsu, and the stuff before that with Book of Souls and all those things. Like, Sign of the Cross was like their second longest song forever. It's right around 11 minutes, 16 seconds, so close to Rhyme. And we'll get to Rhyme later, but this song, this is going to be my final word on it, and I'm going to go and dive into it, but this is what the song is. This is what it means. Sign of the Cross is an underrated gem. That's how I can describe this song. If you haven't listened to Sign of the Cross on the record, or you haven't listened to it, you know, watched videos on YouTube or seen it live, it is a song that deserved to be on a better record. I mean, the X Factor, this song makes the X Factor. You look back at like Matt and I's rankings of albums, the X Factor for the 90s is actually a pretty decent record. I think we both gave it around 7.5, something like that. It's a passable record, and it's songs like Sign of the Cross. Sign of the Cross on another album, like I said this before, if you were to take this and put it on like a Matter of Life and Death is already amazing, but with this on it, I mean, it would be unbelievable. Like, that's why it's underrated, though, because it's on an album in the 90s that wasn't well received because Blaze was the singer, and you know, metal music in general was going through a rough patch. Grunge had exploded, punk had exploded, and like popular punk. And well, a lot of the stuff in the latter 80s and the early 90s was hair metal bands too. So like it was this like these bands just trying to like kind of like copy each other, so to speak. They were very similar. This stuff that had like really deep themes that wasn't like easily digestible for popular audiences was getting thrown in the garbage can. Like, it was, people didn't eat it up. That's why this album suffered, and that's why, and with Blaze too, there's a bunch of different discrepancies, but this song is an amazing song. And it's an underrated gem. That's really all I can say. It's an underrated gem. It's a phenomenal song, and it opens up with these monks chanting, which is unbelievable. And then there's like this underlying guitar part, like playing underneath, really neat. And then when the lyrics come in with Bruce, like with Bruce live, which is incredible, the Rock and Rio version, the Legacy of the Beast version, which Legacy I saw the song 3 times, is amazing. Even on the album version, like the whispering, 11 saintly shrouded men, silhouettes stand against the sky, one in front with cross held high, come to wash my sins away. The guitars and the bass are emulating Blaze's and Bruce live vocal lines. Just super cool. And then Nico kind of comes in with a and there's this instrumentation playing in the background. There's this build up, and there's like just musical feels with that whole part. And then it just explodes into the screaming parts of standing alone in the wind and rain, feeling the fears of brewing, sensing the change in the tide again, caught by the like that whole section. And then the ending part, like, they'll be saying their prayers when the moment comes, there'll be penance to pay when it's judgment day. Like, the guitar part's amazing. And the chorus is great. And this is why this one is a step above Seventh Son of a Seventh Son and these other songs. Because yes, the chorus is repeated several times, but there are, again, subtle transitions in it that are really well done. The sign of the cross, the name of the rose, the fire in the sky, the sign of the cross. Super cool. And the fact that it's based on a movie with Sean Connery and Christian Slater, The Name of the Rose, which is an amazing movie about these monks in this medieval abbey, and there's like a murder going on. It was based on a book by Umberto Eco, who was an Italian medievalist and philosopher who wrote this book in like the 80s, I think, 1980 or something like that. The book came out. But the song is based on that, and it's just an amazing song. Not for the fact that it's based on that, but it's really refined and really well done. There's so many musical shifts and ideas in this this is like going back to what I talk about with like Mother Russia and some of the other songs, like Afraid to Shoot Strangers and stuff, where there was like so much stuff going on, it kind of got convoluted and a little muddled, like a little muddy. This is not like that. This is like concise, completely tied together musical ideas that's like a fucking DNA strand. Like it's like a double helix. It's just winding together and creating shit. Like it's creating beings, man. This stuff is unbelievable. It is an example of that, and there's a lot of other songs that are like that as well. This is a very complete song. There's nothing about it that I can criticize. It's one of those things, like some of the other stuff I talked about on some of those other ones, like there are some little subtle criticisms with stuff with Seventh Son, with Klansman, with No More Lies, When the Wild Wind Blows, Lost in the Lost World, Afraid to Shoot Strangers, Fear the Dark, Prodigal Son, Mother Russia. This is probably the first song that I've reviewed so far on this epic list that I can't criticize. There's nothing about it. There is nothing about it that I can criticize. Nothing. It is a perfect song. Like it's a 10 out of 10 song. I have to give it that. Like it's an amazing song. It's an underrated gem. And the thing about it is it's so diverse. There's ambient and quiet parts in it. Like I said, there's very similar to what they did before with some of these other songs I've talked about. There's background eerie ambience, chanting that comes in again with this real subtle, slow, like melodic part. Very much like Seventh Son and some of the songs that came before it. There's an instrumental build-up again. And then it goes into like this section where Yannick and Dave play this interlude guitar part. And then there's a crazy like drum section where Nico has this drum break. And then a live show, that part goes into like the fireworks exploding. And then it goes into Dave and Yan with the harmony line again, like and then Dave rips out one of his most amazing solos in my opinion. He has his Sign of the Cross solo is one of his best solos ever in like the Maiden catalog. He does like this crazy tapping thing at the beginning, then he does some weird alternate picking, and it's just amazing. Into Yan's solo, which is one of Yan's best solos. Like those two on this record, because Adrian wasn't in the band, like it's incredible. This is where they're starting to find like their synergy together, and it's beautiful. Like the song is amazing. Then after that happens, it goes back into a harmony interlude, into another interlude where, you know, in the live versions, Steve, Yan, and Dave are like jumping up and down, like they're doing like the jumping. It's amazing. And then it goes back into the lyrics on the chorus, Sign of the Cross, Name of the Rose, Fire in the Sky, Sign of the Cross. And then the ending goes back into that really cool acoustic-y bass and guitar intro like they played in the beginning. Blaze says it in the album, but live, Bruce says, lost the love of heaven above, chose the lust of the earth below. 11 saintly shrouded men came to wash my sins away. And then it just fades out and ends. It's a masterpiece song. It's amazing. And that's why it's where it's at. And like I said, these last couple several ones, from like Lost in a Lost World to this point right now, and then the next song I'm going to talk about, which is going to be the last one for part 1 today, we'll talk about the rest in part 2, they are fractions apart from each other. And it's almost, like I said, a preference for me to pick these because of the experiences I had with them when I listened to them and what I like. A lot of that comes into me, how many times I listened to a record, how many times I saw a live show, etc. So, for me, that's where Sign on the Cross is at. It's an underrated gem. Listen to it if you haven't. It's incredible. It's an incredible song. You can listen to the album version on the X Factor. There's a live version of it on the Rock in Rio concert DVD or album. And there's a live version of it on the Legacy of the Beast, Knights of the Dead concert album. So if you get a chance to listen to it, you want to listen to it live, you want to listen to it on the album, listen to those, because it's amazing every time. It's an amazing song. And that brings us to number 13. And number 13 for me is For the Greater Good of God from A Matter of Life and Death that came out in 2006. This song is 9 minutes and 23 seconds long. One thing about this, and I'm going to say this, I'm a little biased because Matter of Life and Death was the first album that came out when I was a Maiden fan. I got into Maiden in like 2004, 2005, so like a year and a half after they released Dance of Death. So when this came out, this record, I was in awe. Like, I was starstruck. My mind was blown. I was utterly captivated, immersed in this record when it first came out, and I still am. It's one of my favorite albums, period, of all time. Not just from Iron Maiden, but like, it's one of my favorite records ever made in like the scope of like what kind of music I listen to. Prog rock, heavy metal, classic rock, all that kind of stuff. It's one of my favorite records ever. So, yes, I'm a little biased. But with that being said, I want to talk about this song and how it ties into that record, and this is why it's at this position for me. First of all, I'm going to talk about it like I did the other songs. It has a really cool ambient opening. The bass and the guitar is into this really soft ambient riff that has a little bit of chord play in the background, with Bruce kind of saying, "Are you a man of peace or a man of holy war? Too many sides to you, don't know which anymore. So many full of life, but also filled with pain. Don't know just how many will live to breathe again." That whole piece, I mean, lyrically incredible, beautiful, and I'm going to talk about that down the road. Then Nico comes in with the hi-hat like underneath the lyrics, and it continues. Then the whole band comes in with this heaviness, and Bruce is like screaming. They fire off many shots and many parting blows. Their actions beyond the reasoning only God would know. And as he lies in heaven, or it could be in hell, I feel he's looking down or looking from below, but I don't know. And then this chorus is fucking amazing. I don't care what anybody says. Yes, it's a little repetitive at times, but not in a bad way. This is one of those things that I said on a previous podcast, where sometimes the repetitive choruses are like essential to the song, and this chorus is essential to the song. This is a repetitive chorus that is amazing, and there's some versatility in the lyrics too. It's not the same thing said over and over again. But please tell me now what life is. Please tell me now what love is. Well, tell me now what war is. Again, tell me what life is. And then back into the more pain and misery in the history of mankind. Sometimes it seems more like the blind leading the blind. It brings upon us more famine, death, and war. You know, religion has a lot to answer for. Then back into the for the greater good of God. For the greater good of God. Like I said, a little repetitive, but with this song, it's perfect. It really fits the pace of the song. It fits the instrumentation and the music perfectly. And again, this is another song that's amazing live. The crowd really gets into this song. It's a very crowd-friendly, crowd-created song, and the band loves to play it. And I'm going to keep going here with Nico and the accents and the riff into this bridge. The first person you saw was on the song is Yannick. Then there's this another crunchy melody section, which is like more like really neat. And Adrian has this incredible solo. Then Dave has a solo immediately after Adrian. Then it goes into some other melodic idea, and then into another melodic idea, another bridge and interlude, and then they come back at the end of "Please tell me now what life is." You want to call it like a pre-chorus. Tell me now what love is. That whole section. And then the chorus ends, right? And then it goes into the chorus would be the "For the Greater Good of God" section. Then the ending of the song is "He gave his life for us. He fell upon the cross to die for all of those who never mourned his loss. It wasn't meant for us to feel the pain again. Tell me why. Tell me why." Then it goes back into that ambient beginning riff on the bass and the melody line with the guitars and the bass. It's really ambient. And then if you watch this song, like when they performed at a Download Festival in 2007, at the very end, when like they're playing that melody line to close the song out, Bruce is just like staring off into the crowd, and you can see he's almost like weeping. He's like almost teary-eyed. You can tell how much this song really hits him hard, and the rest of the band too. And that's why when I want to say this and I talk about this song, Matt and I never really said this on the podcast when we talked about A Matter of Life and Death, because we were just so excited to review the album, right? But, just sitting here thinking about it right now and doing this Steve Epic's list, this song, for me, and I'm not saying that, no other songs on the A Matter of Life and Death album really encapsulate the title of that record, but this one encapsulates the title the most, in my opinion. The Legacy is probably up there too, but those two, this one I think is slight edge. And the reason I say that is like the cover of A Matter of Life and Death is a tank with all the skeletons and like a World War II kind of motif, and it's called A Matter of Life and Death. And this pre-chorus, "Please tell me now what life is. Please tell me now what love is. Well, tell me now what war is." And it's almost like he's asking questions, and he's asking somebody, "Hey, well, tell me now what war is." And the guy says, "Well, war's like death. People die." And then he goes, "Okay, well then again, tell me what life is. So why would you go to war if people are going to die? Like, it's a matter of life and death." That is the cherry on top for me of the song. That's why it's where it's at for me too. Another thing about this record, and I know that I'm talking about A Matter of Life and Death now, the album, but I have to because it's one of my favorite records, and I'm going to talk about it. This is A Matter of Life and Maiden, right? This song and this record as a whole, I would sum the entire thing up like this, and this song is an example of it, but the entire record for the most part, maybe one or two songs don't really fit this final thought, but it is an emotional and lyrical maturity and mastery. This song and this album is emotional and lyrical maturity and mastery. This album is probably the deepest record Iron Maiden has ever done, even to this day. I think Book of Souls had some really mature elements in it, but there was some more like whimsy in it, right? I think Senjutsu had a lot of mature themes in it, but again, there was a little bit more whimsy and imagination in that record. This one is very deep. This is a very deep, emotional, philosophical record, and I think it's the deepest, I think it's the heaviest, I think it's the most emotional, and I think it's lyrically their best album ever, and I think it's their heaviest record ever. lyrically, emotionally, and in terms of sound, the heaviest record they've ever done. For me, that's why it's one of my favorite records of all time, and that's why I rank it, at a 10 out of 10. It's a perfect album. If I can echo kind of what I said about Sign of the Cross, if you haven't got a chance to listen to A Matter of Life and Death and really listen to it, it's an amazing album. It is one of the most mature, deep, emotional albums ever, and I think with this record, they really mastered it. I really do. I think they really mastered that emotional depth. There's immense maturity to this album. The themes are just more engrossing. They're not flighty or playful or in a fun way. They are more mature. And this record is the shining example of that. And this song, For the Greater Good of God, which, in my opinion, like I said, basically, if you were to pick what would be a title track, it would probably be this one for that record. That's why it is where it is for me. So I know I talked about For the Greater Good of God forever, but that's where I'm at with it. And this has been part 1 of ranking Steve's epics, because it's probably over an hour here and I've done half of it, and I didn't want to make a 2-hour podcast, so I figured I'd break it up so I can focus on the songs and do a little bit more digesting down the line here. But yeah, that's been the first half of it for part 1. I will return with ranking Steve's epics on episode 25 of the podcast, part 2. So again, really appreciate you listening to A Matter of Life and Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. I am Joe Labriola. Take care of yourselves out there, up the irons, and make sure you get tickets for the Future Pass Tour in 2024 if you can.